Family History: How I Came to Be by Micaela. Canada, the last best west, was the ideal place to live. The west offered agriculture, lots of land, shelter, food and water, and good weather for farming. Propaganda sprung up everywhere. Soon everyone of different cultures were coming. The last best west is a multicultural society. You can escape from persecution and discrimination, and you are allowed to live freely and not be told how to live by anyone. During the time of immigration in 1906, the government had made an Immigration Act, which meant that they could reinforce measures of restriction and enforcement. This gave the government legal authority to deport immigrants within 2 years of arriving in Canada. In 1908, the border inspection was created. This was a change because the border used to be open and people could come freely, but people were often characterized as discriminatory. But luckily, my family was never affected by this. During the time of immigration, the British, Jewish, First Nations, Chinese, Japanese, and Black Oklahoma farmers and many more people were the most common to immigrate. They built a free society, and there were struggles of the Aboriginal people surviving. Economic growth was slow at start and then varied in regions. Over 50,000 people arrived in 1901. It was a multicultural society. The government grew separate from the U.S., homes improved, and everyone had jobs and food. In the West, pretty much everyone were farmers. Aboriginals lived by hunting and gathering. Then the fur trade came into view, and not long after that, the Europeans came to Canada to exploit fishing and trade. The agricultural process was slow. Minimum wage came into the picture way later when the factories were up. Birth rates were really low and the real wages rose in 1945. My family used to work in the factories to escape the life that they did not want. My grandma's great-grandfather is Karl Holtz. Their family lived in Germany and moved to Ellis Island to New York by boat. During this time, Karl was only 12. World War I was going on at the time and they wanted to escape it. When the boat docked on Ellis Island, there were soldiers already there waiting. Karl had an older brother who was just 16 years old. The soldiers took him and he had to go fight in the war. They left Karl behind because he was too young. Karl never seen his brother again. Karl and his family eventually arrived in Canada in 1900. Karl's family wanted to move to Canada for a better life and to escape the war. Karl was just 13 years old when he was working in a basket factory and only making 50 cents a day just to try to move to Canada. They didn't have too much money, but when they arrived in Canada, they got jobs and they got all of their money back. After a few years of living in Canada, Karl met a girl named Clara Heinz. They were married for 66 years and they had 5 children, but sadly, one of them died at a really young age. The one child, Arnold, grew up and fought in the army in 1942. He was later dispatched, and not long after that, he was a laborer for the Canadian Pacific Railway. On February 12, 1949, Arnold was on his way to meet a friend when he seen this girl sitting on her front porch. That girl's name is Doris Garvin. They started talking and then they later got married. They had 7 children. My grandma, Susan Holtz, was the third born. My grandpa's side of the family originated from Romania. They moved to Canada for a better life, more job opportunity, and to escape persecution. Before moving to Canada, they were rich. Constantine Dornian, my grandpa's great-grandfather, moved to Canada with his family in the early 1900s. Constantine and his family shipped from a German port. They had very little money and possessions by the time they eventually reached Canada. When Constantine got to Canada, he met a lady named Katrina Rack. Shortly, they got married and then they had 12 children together. But unfortunately, there's only records of 6 kids. One of their children's name is Stefan Dornian. Stefan met a girl named Flora Urson, and shortly after they got married and they had 10 children. One of their children named Paul went to a school dance in Mydale one night, and at that dance, he met a girl named Marion Stark. Sparks flew and they started dating. Eventually, they got married on October 24th, 1949. Shortly after they moved to Estevan, they had 9 children. Paul was a farmer his whole life until he became a janitor at an elementary school. Marion was a cook at the Elks, and then she worked at a nursing home for a long time. Sadly, Paul passed away from cancer in 1987, and long after that, Marion passed away also in 2012 from cancer. Larry Dornian, the second born, is my grandfather. This was, at one point, the whole Dornian family, but of course, it needs to be updated. Larry and Susan met through friends. Susan moved to Estevan, and shortly after that, they got married on September 9th, 1972. They had 2 children, my father, Michael Dornian, who was born in Regina, Saskatchewan, and my uncle, Corey Dornian, who was born in Estevan, Saskatchewan. My dad and my mom, Chrissy Frankert at the time, met through friends also. They had their firstborn child on March 3rd, 1999, and that is me. My mom and my dad got married in May 1999. They had their second child on October 24th, 2002. His name is Maddox Dornian, and he was born in Estevan, Saskatchewan. Shortly after that, they split up in 2003, and the divorce was finalized in 2004. They both went their different ways, and they both got remarried. My dad got married to a girl named Jackie Miller. She lived in Alameda, but as soon as they started dating, she moved to Estevan to be with him. Shortly after that, they got married. They had two little girls named Addison and Aubrey Dornian. Addison is 6 years old and was born in Regina, Saskatchewan, and Aubrey is 4 years old and she was born in Estevan, Saskatchewan. My mom married a guy named Sean Pearson. He had 3 kids before they met, and their names are Kanasia, Shay, and Matea Mitchell. With learning about how my family came to Canada and how great Canada has become, I am very lucky and very proud to be born and raised in Canada, thanks to my family in the past. And that is how I came to be.